Many new home buyers put a lot of significance in how long a property has been for sale. They ask me, what's the D.O.M? But out of context, D.O.M isn't the big red flag so many are led to believe. Why not? My name is allen-rouman, and I'm a real estate agent in beautiful Palm Springs, California. To be clear, the D.O.M is the total number of days elapsed since a property was first entered into the multiple listing service. It starts when an agent enters the property information into the system, and the counter stops when the home goes into contract. I should mention that the true MLS is a Realtor-only computer system that we use to share data among real estate professionals. I have a separate video that explains this unique tool in greater detail, so look for that. As a statistic, days on market is a useful clue to understanding a property's position within the overall housing marketplace and, perhaps, a gauge of an owner's willingness to sell at the right price. But let's be clear, the D.O.M isn't like the expiration date on milk. Rather, it is one element in the equation that is as much art as it is science to understand. Let's first put on the table what many seem to think. That is, if a house has been on the market a long time, that is, has a high number of days on market, then the house is obviously overpriced and the seller should be willing to take a much lower offer. Well, maybe and maybe not. Set aside reading tea leaves for a moment and let's look at the bigger picture. Real estate markets are constantly evolving. We all know that. Things as general as who's hiring in an area to as particular as the individual growth of families are among the variables that fuel this change. Now, when economic times are good and Americans feel financially hopeful and confident, well, we tend to move around more. And the speed of that movement provides context for the statistic of days on market. In other words, how quickly or how slowly buyers in an area are absorbing the homes for sale will influence the significance of the D.O.M number. For example, imagine that houses in your area are, on average, going into contract in 45 days, and a place around the corner from you comes up for sale but has been on the market for 30 days. Its D.O.M are well within the reasonable framework for your specific market. Where D.O.M seems to take on a life of its own is in markets where the average absorption rate is fairly low. In these cases, buyers tend to see a high D.O.M as an opportunity to get a bargain. But a low average D.O.M number says that buyers are snapping up homes and thus it's a seller's market. In that case, a seller may be trying to set a market high with their price, and if demand is strong, they may in fact get it. At the opposite extreme, like what we saw after the housing crash, the average absorption rates were sometimes as high as 200 days or more. Now, unless a seller was up against some other deadline, a D.O.M of 90 days wasn't necessarily going to push them to accept a low offer. Days on market and absorption rate go hand in glove. Without knowing both, one simply isn't enough information. But let's back up a moment and return to the underlying premise behind many homebuyers' interest in D.O.M. It's the idea that getting a home for less than the seller's asking price represents a bargain. Now, bargains are generally understood as things priced lower than the market value. Starting with a seller's asking price and seeking concessions from there makes more sense once you've done your homework and you've got an independent calculation of the market value of the property and measured it against your desire to buy it. In other words, the seller's asking price may or may not be aligned with the market value of the property. And unless you know the market value in conjunction with the average D.O.M and the absorption rate, you can't reasonably determine a fair offer price. In my video on a property's price versus its value, I discuss why focusing on getting a home for less than what a seller wants for it is sometimes misguided. That video isn't out yet, so I suggest you subscribe to my channel to get word of it when we publish it. I've covered a lot in this video, and while I hope it helps put the data point of days on market in some context when buying a home, I recognize that you may have additional questions. If so, please leave them in the YouTube comment section below, or feel free to write to me personally. If I can't help you myself, I'll do my best to refer you to someone who can. Until next time, thanks for watching.